I grew up in California for the first 14 years of my life. Our neighborhood wasn't the best, namely because it was an area that the Crips were known to reside in. If you don't know, the Crips are members of the one of the biggest Los Angeles street gangs. My best friend, who I always called Stevie D, lived two doors down. We had other friends, of course, but we would often hang out just we and I. We'd usually ride our bikes together around town or play video games, just basic kid stuff. When we were 12, we were biking around the neighborhood one night and decided to visit a well-known abandoned house. It had been vacant for many years because no one would buy it for whatsoever reason. When we pulled up on our bikes to the front of the house, Stevie points out to the window and said, "Look." I pushed my bike a little closer to the window and focused my vision on it. I could see someone peeking out the window. I could not tell if that person was looking at us or not, but it was definitely a person's face sitting between the curtains. It was extremely strange considering the place had been unknown for years. We stared for longer than we should have perhaps and noticed something else that was strange. The person didn't move their face at all. We inched a little closer onto the empty driveway actually. Upon getting closer, it appeared to be a Halloween decoration or something, like a fake head. This meant someone had stuck into the house to put it there. Stevie D and I, being the mischievous kids we used to be, hatched an idea to sneak in through the back somehow and check out the place. We hid our bikes on the side of the house behind an overgrown bush and snuck into the yard. To our surprise, the back door was already unlocked, but when we came to think of it, it wasn't that surprising, considering it seemed someone had already broken in to put that fake head there. We stepped into the house, but we didn't want to turn the lights on and expose the fact that we were in the house. It was dark in there, but not pitch black, so we could make our way through the house. We got to the living room first because we wanted to check out that fake head thing at the window. It smelled really bad in that room though. I picked up the head from the windowsill and immediately dropped it and screamed. I dropped it not because it was surprisingly heavy, but because it also felt like real skin. I saw a dark liquid pouring out from the bottom of the head that was now on the floor. It was blood. It was a real human head. We heard two footsteps in the ceiling above us. Stevie and I looked at each other with our mouths hanging open. We ran for the back door and got back on our bikes to get the hell out of there. Anyone in our immediate area learned pretty soon that the head belonged to a victim of the Crips, who apparently placed the head there as some kind of a mystery. I don't think anyone knew the full story, but there was a good chance whoever placed the head there was still in the house because Stevie and I both heard footsteps in the ceiling above us. Last year, a guy came to my house's door around 9 p.m. He knocked on the door, so I got my mom and she went out to see who it was. By the way, we live in a rural area, so visits that late are extremely uncommon and strange. The guy talked to my mom about how he was opening a business, asked whether she liked American made products, then handed her a Clorox container as a sample. He went back to his minivan and opened it to get a quote unquote vacuum cleaner when my mom saw five other men sitting inside. She told me to run and get my phone since we don't have a landline. I couldn't find it, so I got a knife and stood around the corner. She threw the container outside and told them to get the hell off her property as well as that she was calling the cops. They peeled out of the driveway and we never saw the car again. I have always been an extreme sports person ever since I was little. Mountain climbing, parasailing, scuba diving, though I have always been an avid skier. I'd go upstate skiing at least 10 times a season, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone. My friend, who I'll call Q, agreed to come upstate and go camping with me, so we could do some backcountry skiing, which is basically skiing in the backcountry on marks or on patrolled areas outside of a ski resort boundary. It was a 3-hour drive, then a decent amount of off-roading to get to where the hills were. I parked my truck at the bottom of a decent looking area full of hills. But I also stopped there because I couldn't really drive out much further given that there were too many trees. You and I then proceeded to unload the back of my truck of all our stuff, including ski gear and camping equipment. Then we hiked about a quarter mile, which was an incredible amount of work with all the stuff we were carrying. We found a perfect place to set up camp, right near the bottom of an uphill and in the bed of a clearing between the trees. Setting up the tent and unloading our sleeping bags and equipment and such was first priority. When all of that was done, we started to hike up the hill to scout the area. We did a decent amount of hiking, but we also got a lot of skiing in. At one point, Q and I lost each other while skiing down a bigger hill. I assumed I'd meet him at the bottom or just find him eventually. I checked the walkie-talkie just to see if he would answer it, but he didn't, which meant he was still probably going downhill. At some point, while I was walking with my skis at the bottom of the hill, I ran into someone, another skier. He sounded very friendly under a ski mask, asking me where the best hills are and if we were camping and such. He had his skis strapped to his orange backpack. I pointed to the hill I just skied down and also pointed in the direction we set up camp. He said he and his wife were trying to find a good place to set up camp near other people and asked if I could lead him to my campsite. As much as I didn't want to trek all the way back there, I felt I had to be a good Samaritan and help this man and his wife. I pulled out my walkie again and said into the speaker to Q that I was going back to the campsite for a bit. I started to lead the man who was behind me when I suddenly started getting some static from the other end on the walkie. It seems someone, probably Q, was trying to talk to me, but the connection was shit. Nothing I could do about that except for come back to this hill afterwards. It took a decent amount of hiking and a small talk with the man before we reached the campsite. I turned around to him and smiled under my mask, which I realized instantly was pointless. He sounded very thankful for he and his wife, and I finally asked him where is his wife. He didn't answer. He started to walk closer to me. At first I thought nothing of it, but for some reason something about his skis and backpack just struck me. They belonged to Q. For a split second I thought, is this Q? Is he pranking me? But it wasn't possible. The voice was too different from Q. The man was a few mere feet away from me at this point, and he was picking up the pace to a more intimidating approach. I panicked and jumped into the tent to dig for my flare gun in my bag. The man grabbed my leg, which was sticking out from the tent, and then I felt a sharp, intense tingle in my leg, like a severe electric shock followed by a burning heat feeling. I screamed in pain as I managed to pull out the flare gun, push aside the door to the vent and aiming at the man. He immediately backed up with his hands in the air, and that's when I noticed the knife dug deep into my leg. I ordered the man to tell me where my friend was. He answered quickly, saying near the bottom of the hill he found me at. I told the man to stand still while I called 911 to request an immediate rescue, but the man took off quite easily while I was on the phone. There wasn't much I could do with one single flare gun shot. I felt like I was waiting there in the cold with my bleeding leg forever, until finally the reassuring sound of the helicopter swooped overhead and I shot my flare gun. I cannot believe I was actually picked up by a helicopter, which I helped locate my friend laying in the snow in the middle of the hill. He was unconscious and he had been stabbed twice in the leg then dropped. He tried talking me through the walkie while he was losing consciousness, but the connection was bad. We both went to the hospital and we are fine today.